Okay, so this is a follow-up to the best video game of all time bracket. When we looked at it, it was the round of 16. Gave my thoughts on how ridiculous some of these games were to beat other games, especially, the general trend was older games getting killed by newer games, and talking about demographics, and it's understandable. It's just disappointing. Well, now we have a winner. We'll kind of go through the round of 16 to see who wins there. But of course, a lot of the big games, Super Mario World, for example, lost in the first round. We'll see what kind of has made it through. So we'll start in the upper right again, just for consistency's sake. That's where we were last time. And so we're looking at right here, the Elite Eight. So Last of Us beat Smash Brothers and went up against Grand Theft Auto 5. I hypothesized that Grand Theft Auto 5 would win. It did, but I would prefer Last of Us. I think it's a better game in terms of what it means to video games on the whole. Now, granted, Grand Theft Auto 5, I really liked it. I mean, it was a great game, and the best Grand Theft Auto in my opinion, but I couldn't get into the online at all. I don't play a lot of online games in general. So it stood the test of time because of that primarily. And again, beating Last of Us because of that and familiarity. And, there's also an aspect of some of these games are only available on one console. And so, or at least one brand of consoles. So Last of Us, again, only PlayStation. People just might not have played it, and you're going to vote for the game you're familiar with, most likely. So that made it through. And then you got Batman Arkham City, which was a 14 seed, making it all the way. And it beat Dark Souls. I do prefer Batman Arkham City more than Dark Souls, but that's because I'm not, as they say, I don't get good. And but I probably would have expected Dark Souls to win just based on the love for that genre and that game in particular. And I love Batman Arkham City, but I don't know if it even belongs on a list of like the top 64 video games of all time. So kind of surprising that went through. We'll just finish up this bracket. Grand Theft Auto 5 beats that, understandably, so that's into the semis. Down in the next round here, so again, Titanfall beat Apex Legends. I love Titanfall 2, probably my favorite first-person shooter of last gen. Bloodborne, again, another one of those Dark Souls games that I know people just love. I did play quite a bit of Bloodborne. I liked it, didn't love it, but I would have that go through, just understanding the love for that game. And again, Titanfall 2 is just a really solid first-person shooter. It doesn't do anything particularly special. I mean, I love going between the mech and the Titanfall and on ground, and kind of the parkour that it has, but Bloodborne's a superior game. And then, thank God here, Super Mario Brothers 3 had made it all the way through. But it's going up against the juggernaut that is Breath of the Wild, which wins. And I think that makes sense. I mean, again, Super Mario Brothers 3 is a great game, but I do believe, even though it's contemporary, that Breath of the Wild is considered one of the greatest games of all time. So that makes sense. And then it beats Bloodborne, which is understandable as well. I mean, if I would have looked at this list without any of the votes in the beginning, I probably would have guessed that Breath of the Wild would win it all, just based on how much love it's gotten. I haven't heard like anyone complain about anything in that game. The next one is Minecraft Witcher 3. I've never got into Minecraft. People love it, of course, but The Witcher 3 Wild Hunt was just a masterclass in open world RPG. So I'm glad to see that go through, and it's probably one of my favorite games of all time. I mean, even the DLC is just fantastic. So good to see that one. God of War, great game. I don't think it really upset anything on its way. I mean, I was really surprised that it beat StarCraft by as much as it did, but and probably I would think StarCraft would beat it if it was a group of editors doing this versus people voting. But it is a really good game. And then Elder Scrolls 5, of course, Skyrim, it's been on like every single console. People love it, bugs and all on the PlayStation versions. But I think that's a pretty surprising result, because counter to The Last of Us being only on one console, or at least only on Sony consoles, God of War is the same thing, but it's much beloved. And again, I like it. I love it. I mean, I think if I had to rate it, it's like an 8.5 or a 9. I just don't know if it needs to go all the way through here to the semifinals. And then cheating a little bit, you can see it actually wins the whole thing. So that's really surprising to me. That wouldn't even be on my radar for greatest game of all time. Grand Theft Auto San Andreas, that's a pretty big surprise as well, that it got through, beating Fallout New Vegas. This is a pretty weak bracket for getting into the quarterfinals here. World of Warcraft, Call of Duty 4. I'm surprised World of Warcraft. I think I mentioned in my last video, if it was 5 years ago, that would have gone through, maybe to the final. And then San Andreas, I'm really surprised. Like, even back in the PlayStation 2 days, I mean, I know it was huge, but I don't feel like it was as big as even Vice City. And even the first, Grand Theft Auto 3, the first kind of 3D GTA, like, I feel like that's kind of has a bigger meaning. And that's what's always tough about the best video games of all time. It's a mix of nostalgia, a mix of how it changed the genre, and then a mix of just how it plays and maybe how it holds up today. So I get it. I mean, if you were just going to say the gameplay wise, which was the best one? I mean, San Andreas had literally everything that you could think of. And, GTA 5 is probably the next gen version of what San Andreas is, just based on like, okay, you have every single thing you got to do, versus kind of the GTA 4, back in Liberty City, of course, too, but it wasn't as focused on the menial as San Andreas. Like, you can literally do whatever you want in those games, and that's why people love them. I mean, it is just a big sandbox, as they say. So God of War beats that, and then you got GTA 5 beating Breath of the Wild, which I think is pretty surprising. But man, that would have been crazy to have 2 GTAs in there. And then God of War wins. I mean, I would choose God of War over GTA 5. But again, really surprised that was voted the greatest game of all time. Someday I'll go through and maybe do something similar to this. Maybe I'll start with just looking at PlayStation games, or at least my favorite games, and then kind of pitting them against themselves. But yeah, interesting results. Till next time.